Shy Guy Bazaar is one of the most interesting courses in the game. The course is filled with fun routes. It has an awesome landscape and an awesome theme. It has a secret course hidden in an intermission. And most importantly, its course design is extremely good and complex. But there is something that holds this track back. A problem that prevents it from being a top-tier course, in my opinion. And I hope to show you this problem and many routes that you have never seen before as we explore the roads less traveled of Shy Guy Bazaar. First, let's start with the beginning of the map. Right from the start, there are a vast amount of ways to take this section. Our baseline will go along the road as normal, but if you have a mushroom, you can boost through the sand and trick off of a bump to save 0.5 seconds. Don't have a mushroom? Well, we can instead head all the way to the left and jump onto this railing, but it is slower than the baseline. Similarly, we can jump onto the right railing, but this is even slower than the left side. And there will be more strategies with this railing, but for now, we will move on to the opening of the bazaar, where we can use a mushroom through the grass to save half of a second. And I would like to point something out. Using a mushroom without taking any shortcut or anything will save you around 0.35 seconds. So when I show a route that uses a mushroom, if it doesn't save at least that much time, if not more, then you are better off saving that mushroom for a better shortcut. Anyway, now that we are entering the bazaar, we have a ton of optional pathways to take. So many of these pathways intertwine and interweave with each other that there would be too many for me to cover. So instead, I will be showing every intended route, every advanced/world record strategy, and then show some silly options or personal routes that I've made up while recording this video. So, let's get into some of the basic bare bones paths available to us. First, our baseline takes the inner enclosed section on the right, but we will take the outside path. While it is a bit slower, you are less restricted and might be safer from trailed items by enemies. Also, if you are new to this series, I need to explain the baseline. This time trial ghost in front of us is what I call our baseline. The baseline is a basic route that does not use mushrooms, fancy pathways, or alternate routes, but it does take the tightest turns possible while driving as fast as it can. Think of it as the most intended route of the game, the main road of the course. Now that that's out of the way, let's continue and take the alternate route on the right, where we go up some ramps, ride along on the upper section above the baseline, and then use a boost panel to the ground, where we are a second and a half slower than the baseline. Now we can take this route faster by going on the rail, trick jumping off early, trick off this tarp, and cut right. This is slower by only 0.3 seconds, and it avoids a lot of enemy racers. But for a little silly route, we can add some flair to this by doing a charge jump and wall jumping to the railing above. It's basically the same speed, but it is fun. Next, we have a fun route on the left. Charge jump onto this railing and rail ride up to the end. Then left jump onto the wall, then jump off and land on the railing on the right. Then jump to the boost panel like before and join below. It was a second slower than the baseline, but it was a lot of fun, and we will visit this route again for a silly personal route later. But in the meantime, let's travel back to the start of the race, where we can hit the subscribe button, and then we have the main route that everyone knows at the beginning. Immediately jump onto the right wall, then carefully jump onto the ropes on the right. As we reach the top, jump to the right and land on the upper level. As we drive in this hidden section above the raceway, we jump back down and then boost panel ahead of the baseline by around 0.1 seconds. It's very cool, but the world record route is even more advanced, and it took me a long time to get it. So, let's go over it. Follow the same start as we did before, but this time get to the right rope. As we collect the coin at the end, trick jump right and air trick right onto the wall. Detach off of the wall and aerial trick right onto the railing. Immediately left trick off of this and land on the rope below, which we saw earlier. And as we round the corner, we do an advanced maneuver where we charge jump and barely land up above, ramming into this little block to help align ourselves towards the next turn, saving at least 0.7 seconds if performed fairly well. Now, this took me a lot of time to land. Landing on this railing here and performing this charge jump at the end without accidentally wall riding was really tricky, and it's easy to mess up, but the route is really awesome. and it incorporates aspects from many various intended routes that the game designers intended. Now, before we move on to the next turn, which has many secret routes on it, I'd like to show you a personal route which I think is very goofy and fun. As we come around this beginning corner, you can use a mushroom and charge jump to jump up and bounce off of this palm tree to wall ride up high on the wall. We detach off the wall and launch over to the railing on the left side. Then we follow the rail, jump to the wall, jump to the railing just like earlier, but now we jump to the left onto this railing. From here, we do another left jump, and then wall ride up to this rail, and then cut the wide corner that our baseline takes below. We save 0.39 seconds, but simply mushrooming and missing the palm tree saves exactly that much time. So, is this all worth it? Well, with how finicky this trick is, most sane people would say no. I mean, look at all the weird angles you could get launched off this wall. I landed on these tarps a few times, which was really weird. But, while most people are sane, I main charging Chuck, so I'm not most sane people. So, I kept attempting this route and refining it over and over and over again, until I finally found the best way to exit this corner cutting rope, and it is to do an early right trick, then trick off the platform to take a tighter turn than the normal route allows, saving 0.7 seconds, which is almost world record pace. Except, the world record route doesn't need a mushroom, but who cares? I made this route, and that's why I like it. Now, as we move on to the next turn of this Plaza Square vibe, there's only one optional route, and that's a mushroom cut through the grass. It's kind of difficult, but it can save you at least 0.6 seconds. And then, we turn the next corner and enter what I call the residential street of Shy Guy Bazaar. And there are a surprising amount of routes to take, but they should make the problem of Shy Guy Bazaar even more apparent. The most obvious alternate route is to jump down into this lower section, where we boost back to the main course. It ends up being slightly slower than the baseline. Another apparent route is jumping off this ramp. It's fun, but airtime is slower, so we are slightly behind again. Alternatively, we can jump into the wall to start a rail ride over to the right, but this route, similarly, is slower. Now, a silly route that I found was if you are, let's say, slowed by an item at this corner, we can do a charge jump off of this lamppost to jump up to the railing above. Now, because of the positioning of this lamppost, we cannot get the charge jump in time going at full speed, so this isn't really a viable option. But now, I want to show you a really cool area that I have never seen anyone take before. As we approach the turn leading to the residential street, we can charge jump onto the outside wall and trick a few times to get up to this railing. Now this is much slower than our baseline, but there's more. If we can actually get all the way up the wall, we can jump off early, and yes, this entire area is legal terrain. We then jump right above the boost ramp from before, and this is technically faster than the previous option, but not faster than the baseline. But that's not all. We can, again, jump off early, and there is a secret boost panel all the way up here, followed by another boost panel that leads directly to the rope bridges on the left side of the next section. Now, what is this area? I mean, look at the minimap. We are so far off what appears to be the course. This track is so cool. I mean, there's so many different areas. And you may ask how I knew about this section. I actually found it by accident. I was trying to take the lower route and boost jump as high onto the wall as I could when I accidentally attached to this rope and it sent me to this boost panel. At this point, I thought, wait, was that a boost panel up there? And so I investigated further. And oh yeah, that was a silly route you can do as well, but it's very unstable. And at this secret area, at this boost panel, you can jump into the wall and then ride this railing, which perfectly aligns you with the rope bridge below. I mean, it's just so cool that this area exists, and I've never seen people take it. It's so weird. Anyway, go back to the route below. If you do wall ride this wall, you can jump to the right-hand side as we enter the next section. Speaking of, there are plenty of options to do as we take this boardwalk area. Most simply, you can rail ride the guide rail and launch up higher, slightly slower than the main route. The fastest route is to jump to the left and land on the precarious rope bridges, which will be 0.3 seconds faster, and you can optionally go to the left ropes to get coins. Now, jumping to the right side is equally fun, but not as fast. Even if my footage shows me ahead of the baseline, trust me, it's not faster. Now, there are alternate ways for both left and right sides as well. You can charge jump off the left to jump to the left rope right away and collect all 3 coins. Or, we can charge jump off the right side rail and barely wall ride and get to the top railing of the side wall, which is so cool and it's so difficult to get to, but it's not faster than the baseline. Now that we have finished that section, before we glide on to the final turn of this course, I'd like to go through a really long route. There is a P-switch in free roam that guides you through this route with a ring challenge, and you can do it in the course. So here it is. Start the beginning with the standard competitive route, but instead of jumping to the right, jump onto this railing and leap across to the left rail from the palm tree shortcut I demonstrated before, and we take that entire section as I showed before. But as we jump to the right, we aim for the stairs, and here we start an outside wall ride, which is very difficult to get right. A little too high and you go out of bounds, a little too low and you go in the grass. But if you do it just right, we can dismount right before this ramp, and from here, we rail ride till the end of the rail, and then left trick onto this other rail seen from the ramp route from before, and then we end it by jumping onto the outside wall and leaping to the glide ramp. Now, despite taking all of these weird routes and outside turns, this route is only 1 second slower than the baseline, which I see as an absolute win. Finally, let's move on to the glide ramp and go over to the final turn of the course before we talk about the main problem with Shy Guy Bazaar, which I think should be fairly obvious by this point. First, we can glide to the right and use a mushroom through this off-road. It's not a very reliable route, and it only saves 0.1 seconds, so this cut is a no-go. Instead, save your mushroom to boost through the sand a little bit later to save a full second of time. Going on the outside of this turn is viable if you want to stay away from the crowd of drivers or you want some easy coins. And finally, if it isn't too crowded, the optimal strategy is to drift boost through the small sand section and then trick onto the railing on the right, setting us up for the next lap with a good amount of time saved. And now that we have covered all the basic routes, all the advanced routes, some silly goofy routes, and some hidden routes that I bet you've never seen, what's the problem with this course? It has so many routes to take, but almost all of the routes are worse than just driving straight. And to explain the problem more, let's look at the numbers of some previous videos. Here is the combined routes I've shown in my Whistletop Summit, Acorn Heights, and this Shy Guy Bazaar video. Acorn Heights has more alternate routes because of how customizable the various pathways are. Whistletop Summit has slightly less routes because of how linear the railings are, but it still has some cool sections as we know. And Shy Guy Bazaar has a medium amount of routes that I've shown. Now, let's remove all of the mushroom shortcut routes, as those require an item to use. So now our numbers only reflect the routes that are alternate routes you could take during any lap, any time. For Whistletop Summit, 8 routes are faster than the baseline, meaning 57% of the alternate routes are faster than driving straight on the main road. For Acorn Heights, 18 routes are faster. 62% of the alternate routes are better than driving straight, which is very important, because in that course, there are so many fun things to drive on, glide off of, or bounce off of, so it's healthy to encourage players to experiment with the pathways they see all around them. But now, for Shy Guy Bazaar, of all the 24 routes that do not require a mushroom, there were 4 routes that are faster than just driving straight on the roads below. That's 17%. This is why, when you play this course online, specifically this course, you see players drive on only 2 parts of the track. It's either straight down the road, or the one cool section that is slightly faster. I know that I personally believe that being faster isn't the only factor when choosing what route you should take. Some routes have more coins, others are safer from enemy racers, and some routes are just plain fun. But on this course, when so many pathways are slower than just driving straight on the main road, it's kind of hard to argue my point. And that's why even though Shy Guy Bazaar looks like such an interesting and dynamic course with such a cool theme and setting, exploring the roads less traveled of Shy Guy Bazaar has soiled the glamour of this course. It's no longer as interesting as I used to think, but that doesn't mean the course is bad. It's still one of the coolest courses in the game with so many fun routes to take. I just don't think it's an S-tier course anymore. So, after watching this video, what are your thoughts on Shy Guy Bazaar? Do you still like the course? Have you always hated the course? Do you think the routes are pretty cool and will take them anyway? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of the comments, please let me know what routes you would like to see next. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks to my patrons, and have a nice day. Oh, and for those interested, if you include the mushrooms to those percentages from before, these are the new percentages of what routes are faster than the baseline. And as we can see with Shy Guy Bazaar, it's still fairly low. So, do with that whatever you may. I don't know. Have a nice day again. Goodbye!